Many times I'll be coaching an executive for a presentation and they will wonder, should I be sharing stories in my speeches? And the answer is yes, you absolutely should. But I understand the fear of sharing stories in a speech basically comes from the false idea that if you share a story, it's going to be sidetracking your audience and they're just there to get what you have to share with them. You want to make sure you give them content and you give them an actionable result, which of course you do, but you can do that in an engaging way. Just think of your stories as serving a purpose. If your story has a purpose in your speech, you're going to feel more comfortable sharing it, and your audience is going to be thinking, you know what? Okay, that's why they shared the story. As long as you have a purpose behind your story, just know that that's going to give you the confidence to share it and it's going to mean something for your audience. So basically, just make sure your stories kind of fit into one of these four general criteria. Number one, share a story that shares a success. It can be a success that you've had or a success that a client has had. What is a success that you can share? And you want to make sure in that story that you just don't say, hey, you know what, I was failing and then now I'm a success. Hey, talk about the problems that you went through to get there, the struggle that you went through to get there, the methodology, the process that you went through to actually achieve that success, and then share it. Another one is show a result. You can have a client that went from the then to the now, right? Where were they in the past? What did you do to help them? And where are they now? And the way you share that story is you talk about the past, where they were, you talk about where they are now, and then you reveal how you got them there or how they got there. And what's going to happen is when you share that story, you're going to build that suspense in your audience's mind, and they're going to be thinking, oh, I wonder how they got to that point, because you're going to share the pain of the past, the pleasure of the present, where they are now, and then they're going to be hungry for that result. How did you get them there? So that story has a purpose. So make sure your stories have a purpose as well. The next thing that you want your stories to do is solve some kind of problem. And so now you have a little bit more leeway to, you can share a personal story that solved a problem in your own life that's similar to a problem your audience is having. Just make sure that you have a moment where you come out of that story and you say, hey, listen, here's the general problem from my specific story. Have you had this in your life? Here's how we can solve it together. And when you wrap it in a story, people lean in, they're interested, and then you turn it to about them, and they're that much more engaged. And finally, you can share a story that seeds a product or a coaching or whatever service you provide. A lot of times, a speaker will prepare a whole presentation and then they'll get to the end and talk about the book they have or the coaching program or the product. But if you seed it throughout the speech, then it's more likely to be something they're receptive to near the end. So somewhere in your speech, it doesn't have to be near the end, early on, you can say something like, when I was coaching a client, they were going through this. Or you can say, on page 89 of my book, I share this story. Let me tell you about that. You can seed these things, and then by the time you've done a few of those throughout your speech, at the end, they've heard you talk about, oh yeah, he does coach clients. Okay, let me find out more about that. Or he does write a book. And so by the time you get to the end of your speech, you've already mentioned these things numerous times, seeded throughout your speech. And that way, when you get to the end, they're hungry for whatever it is you have to offer. Just remember, stories matter. Storytelling is still and will always be the foundational part of every speech. I firmly believe that, and that's something that AI is not going to replace. Our personal storytelling ability, your personal storytelling ability, is what's going to set you apart from anything else or anyone else and make you irreplaceable as a speaker. Just make sure your stories serve a purpose.